Hello whisky fans and welcome back. We're still in Feis Ile week here at Whisky Towers. Hopefully I'll be able to get these videos released not too long after Feis itself has actually finished. But we're trying another Bunnahabhain today. So last time we had the Bunnahabhain Avon Araig, which was a decent whisky, but it's kind of a high strength spicy version of the Styradar, which is not what you want to pay £95 for. This time we're moving up the price chain. This is Bunnahabhain Feis Ile 2022 2004 vintage Moine, so that's peated, Tokaji Cask finish. So this whisky is approximately 17 years old, so it's a reasonably old one, especially considering that the last one was a no age statement. Peated Bunnahabhain, aka Stoischer, Toichuk, Kiobanuk. There's lots and lots of different names that Bunnahabhain use for their peated whisky. This one comes in at a very healthy ABV of 52.2%. It's natural colour and non-chill filtered. So Tokaj, or Tokaji as a lot of people pronounce it, is a sweet white wine from northeastern Hungary. And that sweet white wine from Hungary, it gets its sweetness from the grapes actually being infected with what they call noble rot, or what scientists, biologists would call botrytis. Now, noble rot is something that afflicts grapes. It's actually a fungus that damages and contaminates the grapes. And this noble rot, it relies on getting a short spell of wet weather at the end of the growing season, followed by dry weather. Now, if you don't get that wet weather, you just get normal grapes. If you get wet weather that continues, then the rot sets into the vines and just damages the entire crop and you get nothing at all. So to actually get the grapes that make a good Tokaj wine, it requires a little bit of luck. But when it all goes to plan, this noble rot sort of desiccates the grapes, makes them shrink and dries them out, and the infection actually causes the grapes to become incredibly sweet, and it's that elevated sugar content and sweetness that gives the Tokaj wine its trademark character. If this all sounds very familiar to you, then it's probably because it's very similar to the production that they use in Sauterne wine. Broadly speaking, Tokaj wine is kind of the Hungarian equivalent to the French Sauterne white dessert wine. Now, I am quite excited about this one. Firstly, because I love Bunnahabhain and I'm not having to pay £200 for the privilege of trying this one, but also because I've never knowingly had a Tokaj white wine finished whisky. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this compares to other like sweet white wine dessert finished whiskies, things like the Glenmorangie Nectar d'Or or the Arran Sauterne cask. Other details that we know about this whisky, we actually know that it's matured on Islay itself, so it's matured in Bunnahabhain's own on-site warehouse, and we know that it's matured in what they refer to as whisky refill casks. Now that really doesn't mean a lot at all. Does that mean that the cask is for whisky? Does it mean that it's had whisky in it before? Once, twice, 3 times, 18 times? Doesn't really tell us a lot. And also, American oak cask? Is it European oak? But anyway, we know it's matured in a refill cask, and we know that it's finished for just over a year in that Tokaj wine cask. Now, as I said in the review that I did recently for the Brewer, I think that refill casks, contrary to what everyone says about dead inactive casks, I think if you're going to leave the whisky in the cask for a long time and let it mature properly, refill can do an amazing job of really letting the flavours that are in the whisky stand out and shine on their own rather than covering it up with cask influence. So I don't personally have a problem with seeing a whisky like this matured for nearly 2 decades in a refill cask. What I'm not hugely happy about is seeing a whisky matured for nearly 2 decades and then flavoured with a second cask just before bottling. Not a fan of cask finishes. Sometimes it works, a lot of the time it doesn't, but we'll see. Other details, we know that this is a limited edition run of 1,693 bottles, and as I've mentioned before, I'm sure, it's priced at £199, so quite overpriced for a 17-year-old whisky. So I've had this in the glass for a few minutes already, so it can breathe a little bit, and the colour of that, I'd say It's actually very, very similar to the colour of the Avon Araig No Age Statement Bunnahabhain. So, Bunnahabhain 2002, Moine Tokaji Cask finish, Feis Ile 2022, on the nose. Now, lovely intense sweet flavours. You can see that it's a very old whisky, or reasonably old whisky, but I do think there's a bit of a clash between some of the flavours on this, at least on the nose. You're getting lots of earthy peat, also getting some spicy oak coming through, and, as you'd probably expect, lots of sweet white chocolate and honey. Now, all of those flavours are lovely on their own, but I do kind of think that earthy peat and the spicy oak and those bit of synesthesia here, but those kind of white yellow flavours, I hope you know what I mean there, but those honey and chocolate, those light, very sweet flavours, those three don't sit that harmoniously, at least in my opinion. Also getting quite a kind of reflexive citrus, sharp fruitiness, kind of a lime note on the nose of this. And there is a lot of maltiness as well. You can tell that this is a really old malt barley spirit. You're getting lots of... There's something that reminds me of those malted milk biscuits. If you're from the UK, possibly other places in the world, those ones with the cow on the biscuit, you know what I mean. So very, very, very nice nose, although clashes a little bit. It sits a little bit uneasy, and I think that's because of that cask finish. I do get the feeling that if this was matured full term in that Tokaji wine cask finish, then it might be a different story. Anyway, let's see how it tastes. I know I am kind of concentrating on the negative aspects of this whisky, but I do really like it. It's a really enjoyable whisky, and if it wasn't so expensive, I would have definitely bought a whole bottle of this. Getting lots of really intense, sweet, fruity notes on the palate of this whisky, and what I really like, you're getting some notes coming through that are obviously from that sweet white dessert wine, sort of musty, sweet, rubbery grape notes, and I really like that super sweet but slightly musty grape quality to this whisky. I'd even go as far to say that it seems to me, I can taste, in my opinion, that the wine casks that they've used for this, I'd really love to try the wine that came out of those casks before they put the whisky in. Because the flavours that you're getting from this, I think that it would make a cracking wine. But anyway, tasting notes on the palate, lots of that earthy peat again, also more white chocolate notes and intense berry sweetness, and it's a whisky that kind of moves in stages. After that, it kind of moves into this huge hit of slightly rubbery, musty, sweet white wine note, and something that I'm always a fan of because I like my barley influence in my whisky. Towards the late palate, it really fades into quite a pleasant barley maltiness. As for the finish, I'm going to say actually a long finish on this one, which I'm always a bit concerned with cask finished whiskies, that it hampers the body and the finish of a whisky, but on this one it hasn't happened. It's a really good long finish, lingering sweet white wine, some more earthy muddy peat and malted barley. So I think that the Tokaji wine cask on this one is an odd one, but I think it works really well. The end product is really good. I think that the Tokaji wine is very prominent, works really well with the barley spirit, but perhaps doesn't sit quite as well as, say, an Oloroso or even a PX cask normally does with the Bunnahabhain spirit. As for a grade, I'm going to go with a very respectable B, but it is a little bit of an odd experience. I think that this is a very good whisky, although overpriced, and it's a good one for when you're in a little bit of an adventurous mood. It's been a fantastic experience for me though, because this is the first time I've tried a Tokaji wine cask finish, and it makes me hope that lots of distilleries do similar things in the future. So let me know what you think about this one if you've had it, and what you think of sweet white wine, dessert wine cask finishes. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Cheers.